What are we doing again? I forgot. Are we doing Masters of the Universe?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
Hello and welcome back to more Films Under Constant Critique, where we take a look at films, some good, some bad, and some downright awful. I'm Bongo Baikov, joined by our host Maverick, Dren, Zaria. This week we have another special episode.
Yes, we do. Whose idea was this again?
I think it was mine, and I apologize.
Cause I don't know much about the Punisher, so I'm like, why did I do this again? I did learn a little bit about the Punisher though from watching these movies and doing a bit of reading. So I'm like, okay, interesting. I feel like maybe we should have brought on someone who knows more about Punisher than...
I have a friend who's into comics, so I asked him about his opinions, and so we'll have...
So has he seen any of these movies?
He's not seen these movies, but he does know a bit about the Punisher, and so he basically just sent me sort of things to look for in terms of being, you know, comic accurate.
Well, that's a good sign if he hasn't seen any of them. But I'm like thinking, okay, so if neither of us know much about the Punisher, then why the hell are we doing this? This was your idea. Why did you want to do this?
Because I saw that there were 3 Punisher movies that had absolutely nothing to do with one another, made years apart from each other. And I decided, you know, we hadn't done any Marvel movies yet, and so why not start it off in the worst way possible?
There are worse ways to start it. There's a worse way. We could have watched that Captain America movie from the 90s.
That's fair.
That'd be probably the worst way to start it.
But this one was pretty bad, too.
I'm gonna be honest, though. These movies were much more enjoyable for me than what we did for the last Versus episode. 2 of them, at least.
Yeah.
Because the last Versus episode was what? Mortal Kombat.
Yeah.
Versus Mortal Kombat. I mean...
And then we followed that up with Mortal Kombat Annihilation.
Yeah. But I had a basic knowledge of the Punisher going into these. Like, I knew he was, like, more of an anti-hero, like, vigilante-type character. And I actually had seen 2 of these movies before this.
Oh, really?
I actually had. I couldn't remember much of them, though. I remember them not being very good, though. I did remember that, you know, but I'll get into that a little later, maybe. So, I hadn't thought of that. Yeah, this is our first Marvel character.
84 episodes in, we get to our first Marvel movies.
Although, to be fair, I've not really been pushing the MCU stuff, because I don't really... I feel like that's kind of a... you know, once you do one, you end up doing more and more of them, and there are so many of those.
Are you telling me you don't want to do all 4 Thor movies?
Change my mind. That's our next episode. No, I'm kidding. I don't really want to watch any of those. Like,
when movies get to fighting, it happens here, and it finishes here. 3 movies enter, 1 movie leaves. And right now, I got 3 movies. 3 movies with a gut full of fear. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, dying times here.
In one corner, we have the other canon masterpiece that starred Dolph Lundgren, the 1989 Punisher. In another corner, we have the second best movie to feature both Thomas Jane and John Travolta, the 2004 Punisher movie. And in the other corner, we have the not sequel, Punisher Warzone from 2008. That's kind of the outlier here, isn't it? Like, is it a remake? Is it a sequel?
It's neither, question mark.
And the categories, okay, so the categories that they'll be competing for. The first one is tagline /poster/marketing. So I did watch the trailers for those as well, because I was curious. Second is box office / profit. And again, we could split some of these up. Like, for example, for cast / characters, if one of them has a better cast, but the characters in another one are better, we could split that up if we have to. And for tie breaks as well. So, which that's the third category. Fourth is directing. Fifth is critical reception. Sixth is music. 7 is visual effects.
That should be a fun one.
I know that's one of your favorite categories. 8 is story.
That's also going to be a fun one.
They all have the same fucking story to them. 9 is dialogue / one-liners, which that one we might have to split, actually. 10 is pacing / editing. 11 is camera work. 12 is my favorite category, the punishments. Which will basically be like the kills and stuff like that. I love that I named it that. 13, overall enjoyment. 14, tone. That's going to be a really interesting one there. 15 is one I have very little control over, accuracy to the comics. 16 is a similarity to the LJN game.
I feel like that one's pretty easy.
Is it? I actually don't know which one wins that.
I think we'll wait for it.
And if we have a tie or something, we could always do like Fuck, Marry, Kill or something, or Cowboy Ninja Bear, I don't know. So yeah, to reiterate, we got the 1989 Punisher, the 2004 Punisher, and Punisher Warzone, so may the best Punisher win. So, our first category, tagline / poster / marketing. Okay.
Those are all very similar posters. Because it's really just the Punisher standing there. I mean, standing there holding a gun.
Like I said, the Warzone has this one as well. So that's a little bit different.
Ooh, he's changed his angle that he's standing at.
Yep. Okay. The 1989 one just has Dolph Lundgren holding a gun.
By his motorcycle, it's kind of purple.
Yeah, it's very purple. It is nicely drawn.
Yeah.
Yeah. However, you will notice there's something missing.
There's no logo.
Yeah, where's the skull? How do we know if he's a baddie or not? But yeah, the famous Punisher skull is mysteriously absent from the 1989 movie. I don't know if there's like a rights thing going on or what.
I have no idea.
Like, you do see the skull on his knife, though, I guess, like a few times, but that's about it. One tagline was, Judge, Jury, Executioner, all in a day's work.
It was so close to being real. If it was just Judge, Jury, Executioner, that would have been perfect. You didn't need to add in all in a day's work to the end of that.
Another one said, if society won't punish the guilty, he will.
Okay.
There's also, if you're innocent, he's just the protection you want, and all the protection you'll need. But if you're guilty, pray the cops find you before he does.
That's pretty good.
But probably the funniest one I found was, and it's a line from the movie too, I talk to God sometimes. I ask him if what I'm doing is right or wrong. I'm still waiting for an answer. And what's funny is the trailer for this one, I think, is narrated by Optimus Prime.
Really?
I think it's Peter Cullen. It sounds a lot like him. But based on like the trailer and the poster, it just looks like a generic 80s action movie.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be able to tell it's a comic book movie from any of this.
Yeah.
And not only that, it wasn't released in theaters in the US.
Really?
It was direct to video in the US. I think Canada was like going bankrupt at that time. So
okay, that makes sense.
Okay, so the 2004 one gets it right. He's just standing there holding...
they don't just have one skull. They've got two skulls.
Yep, you got the reflection in his shirt showing his skull. Another one of the posters has the faces of Thomas Jane and John Travolta on it. Again, sort of like the Face Off poster.
Oh boy. That really looks like the Face Off poster.
Okay, and also these two were in Face Off. That's another thing.
Also, so far each time we've had John Travolta.
Sorry, when I said this movie was the second best movie with Thomas Jane and John Travolta in it, I meant it's not as good as Face Off. That's basically what I was saying when I said that. Sorry, what?
Yeah, every time we've had John Travolta, he's been a villain.
That's true.
On this podcast.
Well, half and half in Face Off. It makes me wish this movie was like Face Off, too, where it's like the Punisher takes John Travolta's face.
Oh no, I wouldn't be able to stand John Travolta as the Punisher.
And he's got a skull, too. Like, he takes his face so that John Travolta spends the rest of the movie with just a skull instead of a face. So there's more variety with this one, at least.
Yeah. I do like that first one. That one's pretty good.
The one up above with the reflection.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a pretty good one. Some of the taglines were, "Not vengeance, this is punishment."
Okay, that's not as good as the 89 one, in my opinion, but...
Which, the...
Judge, jury, executioner, all in a day's work.
I was gonna say it was better, actually. It's at least simple.
Oh, really?
It's a little bit simpler and gets the point across. On April 16th, one man fights for justice. Natural justice.
That one's too long.
I think my favorite one, and this one's even longer, is, my favorite one is, he has a plan. He has an enemy. This summer, he will execute them both. And the trailers for it are about what you would expect. It's like loud music, shots of him killing people. One of them even plays Bodies by Drowning Pool.
Nice.
You know, let the bodies hit the floor.
Yeah.
It makes it look like a movie that I wouldn't want to see. But they definitely...
I think I know exactly what you're talking about. I have a VHS tape somewhere that has a commercial for this movie on it. I don't remember which one, though.
Oh my god, really? Wow. But I will say, you can definitely tell they spent more money on the marketing with this one than the 1989 one. So, Warzone, the poster, he's firing several guns, has a skull on his shirt. Again, it's simple, but I think it gets the point across.
Yeah.
Some of the taglines include, "Vengeance has a name." "Vengeance is coming."
That one's better.
And...
Oh, that's not a good sign.
"Our future rests in his hands."
What? That's in, like, no way related to the movie.
What could you say? Our future rests in his hands.
Okay, so...
What?
Warzone loses the tagline game, that's for sure.
Yeah. And also the poster. I don't think the posters are as good as the 2004 one.
No.
I think this one's easy. I think the 2004 one wins. But...
I think you're right, especially just because of the.
Oh, I
That's a
forgot
really
to talk
good
about
poster.
the trailer for Warzone.
Oh yeah,
Sorry.
yeah.
Although the trailer didn't impress me that much. Again, it just looks like a lousy action movie. Although it looks like a more enjoyable lousy action movie than the 2004 one. And I watched the trailer before I watched the movie too. And it helps that they have Don LaFontaine doing the voiceover, the trailer guy.
Yeah, yeah.
I wish the trailer had said "in a world" at some point. But yeah, the 2004 one I think wins this category.
Yeah.
Better posters.
All right, so our first
better ads, and more people have heard of it than the other two. I think.
Yeah.
That says something. Like the name recognition with the cast probably helped a bit. I mean, you have John Travolta in it, so.
Yeah. So first point goes to 2004's The Punisher.
The next one is a little surprising. I was shocked when I found out which one won this one. Okay, so box office / profit. The 1989 one cost $9 million.
Okay.
And according to the only source I could find, said it made $30 million.
Wow. That's a return on investment.
Yeah, I was surprised.
Wow.
Like, especially considering how much of a flop Masters of the Universe was.
Yeah.
I should point out, this movie cost half as much as Superman 4. Amazingly, it's the only one of the 3 movies that made its money back.
Ooh, that's not a good sign.
At least theatrically. Like, it made back more than 3 times its budget. That is impressive. And it wasn't even released in theaters in the US. So,
yeah.
The 2004 one cost $33 million and made $54.7 million.
Okay, so it didn't quite surpass expectations there.
Yeah. Because you gotta make at least twice the budget to make a profit. Yeah. That's usually how it works. Warzone cost $35 million and made only $10.1 million.
So that one loses. For sure.
I was reading a bit about this. I think part of why is the marketing might have been part of it, but also it kept getting pushed back too. So that probably didn't help it. Yeah, so amazingly enough, the one that ended up being the most profitable, at least theatrically, was the 1989 one.
From the studio that was, like, going bankrupt at the time.
Although, I'm not sure how trustworthy that source was, but the 1989 one needs all the help it can get during this.
So are we giving that point to the 1989 Punisher?
I think so, yeah.
Alright.
Okay, here we got more to talk about. Cast / characters.
Oh boy.
So the 1989 one stars our good buddy Dolph Lundgren, also known as Ivan Drago from Rocky IV.
Also known as He-Man.
From the canon classic Masters of the Universe, one of my favorite movies. At some point, we still on the podcast.
Yeah.
This is the closest connection we've had to...
Because we've just had Dolph Lundgren, the main character.
They're both made by Canon as well, so that makes it even more connected, but yeah. And he plays the Punisher in this. Lou Gossett Jr. is also in this.
Yep.
And this is not his first Canon film either, because that was the Chuck Norris vehicle Firewalker.
Ooh.
which ripped off Indiana Jones. And he's also in Jaws 3D.
Oh, the best Jaws movie.
He's also in An Officer and a Gentleman, but who cares? We also got Yaron Krabe, who played Koskov in The Living Daylights.
Oh.
And he's also in The Fugitive as Dr. Charles Nichols.
Oh, that's right. I remember. I don't remember what he does in the movie, but I remember seeing him in the movie.
Yeah, he's the guy that switched the samples.
Oh, okay.
And he hired the one-armed man to
Yep.
kill Harrison Ford's wife.
He played Satan.
I've never heard of that.
That is the whitest Jesus I think I've ever seen.
Oh, did you ever think you'd say that on the podcast?
Let's see. He's played by Jeremy Sisto.
I don't think I've heard of this.
Trying to see if he's been in anything.
Oh my god, you're right. That is the whitest Jesus I've ever...
You should just throw a picture of that in the podcast just during this moment.
Jeremy says, I feel like I know him from something, but I'm not sure what. Oh, that might be it. The Julius Caesar miniseries. He played Julius Caesar, and it also stars Richard Harris and Christopher Walken.
Oh.
And I think I'm going to be mentioning that miniseries again, because I think it comes up later.
Really?
Podcast. I don't remember where, but... yeah. Okay, so... Dolph Lundgren. Let's talk a bit about Dolph Lundgren. He basically just goes around wearing a leather jacket, riding a motorcycle, and killing people.
Yeah. Very little dialogue.
He feels more like the Terminator than the Punisher.
He does. He's also not in the first, until the scene where he, busts into this underground casino, he's not in the movie for a lot in the beginning. Because he's in the intro scene. He shows up, every 10 minutes. For the first half of the movie, he's basically absent.
All he does is just kill people in this, basically.
Yeah.
There's, no nuance to his character. My problem with Dolph Lundgren...
absolute psychopath.
My problem with Dolph Lundgren in movies usually is that the dude looks super intimidating when he's silent. But then whenever he talks, it sounds kind of silly.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just because I've seen Rocky 4 too many times. The problem is I can't see him as the Punisher. I only see Dolph Lundgren.
Yeah.
There's just no nuance to his character. It's just he's clearly the good guy. It's super black and white. It's basically just an 80s actionified version of the Punisher. It has as much nuance as the Death Wish sequels.
Yeah.
The other cast members I'm a little more complimentary to, though. Lou Gossett I enjoyed. Especially when he was being an asshole to the press.
Yeah, no, that was fun.
He, gets mad at them for being there at 2 in the morning. That felt so satisfying. He's also the only actor in this movie that never comes across as too silly. He actually seems like he's trying, so I'll give him that.
Yeah.
Yaron Krabe is basically your cliche 80s action movie villain.
Yeah. But he's not even, the main villain for most of the movie.
Oh, that's true, yeah, because the Yakuza shows up.
Yep.
There's, a part of the movie where just the Yakuza showed up and ninjas, I'm like, wait, what is going on? This is absurd.
We'll talk more about that when we get to story, but I went on, a spiritual journey once the Yakuza showed up.
But Yaron Krabe, let's talk about him. He wears a suit, he's a total asshole, he's just sitting around in board meetings plotting things the whole time. I mean...
That's pretty much it. Except for the very end, but...
Although, to be fair, he looked like he was having fun. Like,
Yeah.
I mentioned before, he was in the movie The Living Daylights. He plays a pretty fun Bond villain in that, and he's kind of doing the same thing here, where he's kind of being... He walks this line between being classy and smarmy. It works pretty well for a villain. And his character is just ridiculous, but he was probably the most enjoyable part of this movie. Like, I think that's something I'll be talking about with the '89 Punisher movie, is that I actually really enjoyed it, but not for the intended reasons.
I'm definitely there with you on that one.
Like, there was just a point in that movie where I could not stop laughing just because of how stupid it got. Like, it just, the entire thing just plays like a cartoon. Like,
yeah.
One thing that's weird is his character. He starts off, he's trying to kill the Punisher, but then at the end he's like trying to help him, only to try to kill him at the end.
No, it's so weird. It leads to one of, like, I don't even know if I want to call it the best scene or the worst scene in the movie.
Good question, yeah.
But that's again, I'm waiting for the story part to get to that.
But yeah, the villains in this movie, they're just so cartoonishly evil. There's child slavery in this movie, but they don't handle it properly, and the child actors in this were horrible.
Yes.
They weren't talking like kids, and they were just so wooden and bad. It was just... Also, the Punisher has this thespian friend that he hangs out with.
Yeah, named Shake, played by Barry Otto.
He was a fun character. He needed more screen time.
Okay, honestly, I was looking away from the screen when he first talked, and I thought it was Donald Pleasence's voice. And I was like, what?
He does sound a little bit similar, I guess, but...
But yeah, no, Shake is fun, because he's like this homeless actor that speaks in rhyme.
The whole time it was just funny to me, because I was wondering, why the hell do these two know each other?
That's a great question.
They feel so mismatched. It's so weird. But basically, I think that the '89 one, aside from Lou Gossett and Yaron Krabe, I don't think the cast is that great.
No.
I like Dolph Lundgren, but
the main villain,
he's like the best Punisher. I'm sorry, what were you saying?
The main villain, the leader of the Yakuza, Lady Tanaka, played by Kim Miori. She has some fun moments throughout it.
We'll talk about that a little more later, because I have, under dialogue, I have some...
She has some good lines.
Let's move on to the 2004 one. So that one stars Thomas Jane and John Travolta, both of whom were in Face Off, I should point out.
Yep.
As well as Will Patton, Samantha Mathis.
Oh, that's right.
I bet you weren't expecting to see her on the podcast again.
I was not. She keeps just popping up.
It's just she was also in a Travolta movie. She was in Broken Arrow.
Oh, she's gonna be in the Pet Cemetery film, which is supposed to come out this year, apparently.
Are you requesting a podcast on that or something?
I might be. Oh, it's coming out in like 2 weeks.
Okay, dude, we have to move on, okay? The casting choice that really surprised me, though, I was not expecting him to be in this. Chief Brody. Roy Scheider is in this.
Yeah, no, he's not in it for very much, but he does show up.
That Roy Scheider was in The Punisher, I was like, what?
Yeah.
And I was so happy, too, because I love Jaws. I love that movie so much. But, like, what are you doing in this? And So, John Travolta, let's start with him, actually. He plays the villain. And I was hoping it'd be a reprise of his performance as Castor Troy pretending to be Sean Archer in Face Off.
He sadly wasn't that over the top in this one.
He has his moments though.
He's got moments, but he's not always on like he was in Face Off.
He has a few moments towards the end that are pretty good.
Yeah.
What's weird is his first scene, he has blonde hair.
Yeah, that's right.
That was so jarring. I didn't even know it was him at first. And there was also one scene where at first I thought he was interrogating a dead body. But then it shows he was talking to somebody else who was in the room with him. That seems like something the Joker would do, like just talking to a dead body. Yeah, he's more of a moody villain in this, just kind of quiet and brooding. Yeah. At one point, he smokes a pipe. Would have been funny if he had a Sherlock Holmes hat. And basically, John Travolta and his like cronies, they look and feel like characters from Scarface.
Yeah.
They basically just feel like really generic gangster villains. Although towards the end, John Travolta's character did kind of grow on me a bit, because there's one part where he just throws his wife off a bridge and she gets run over by a train. If he had more moments like that, he could have been a more memorable villain, but like he was okay. Yeah. And then Will Patton, he's just kind of there. Like, I think that was one problem with the 2004 one. The villains were just kind of forgettable.
Yeah.
They were just there. Although apparently Will Patton's character, it's mentioned he's gay in one scene. I was like, oh, that's an interesting detail.
And it ends up kind of working into the plot at one point, too, which is interesting.
But it's 2004, so of course they're not going to do much with that in this movie.
No.
Thomas Jane, he plays the Punisher in this, Frank Castle, and I thought he was okay.
Yeah. Because this one is...
My problem at the beginning, though, was I didn't really buy his chemistry of Samantha Mathis.
No. And I was about to mention, it's different from the 89 one, because this is supposed to be like an origin story.
And they're treating it a lot more realistically in this one.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a much more subtle movie than the 1989 one. And yeah, they do show the whole origin story. You see his family getting killed. In the other two, it's just flashbacks, but we can get into that more in story.
Yeah, no, we'll get more into that for sure.
But yeah, so I didn't really buy his chemistry with Samantha Mathis. You know, maybe they should have cast John Leguizamo in that case. Also, another thing about Thomas Jane, he sort of looks and sounds like Christopher Lambert during parts of this.
He kind of does, yeah.
And like he has a similar dead-eye stare that Lambert has.
Well, that's something interesting, because in the 89 one, Christopher Lambert was considered for the role as the Punisher at one point.
I read that, yeah. I do think Thomas Jane had the right look to play the Punisher.
Yeah.
You can definitely take him a little more seriously in the part. Like, he's more quiet and brooding, which is fitting for the character. And there are a couple of moments where he shows some emotion, but not too much.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he does his job, but I just felt, while watching him, I've seen better. You know?
Yeah.
Like, he wasn't great. He was just... He does his job, you know, but anyway. So Roy Scheider, he plays Frank's dad, and one thing I thought was kind of ridiculous, he has a bunch of guns and shows them to his son at a family reunion.
Right before a firefight breaks out.
Yeah, that's convenient, isn't it? Oh my goodness. But overall, the 2004 one, I felt like the characters were very cookie cutter, not very dynamic.
Yeah.
or interesting. They're just kind of there. Like, the acting wasn't bad. I just think the writing was kind of not totally on their side. There's one part where a guy plays guitar in a diner.
Oh, yeah.
What the hell was that?
One of the hitmen that was assigned to go kill the Punisher. It came out of left field and the character dies like 5 minutes later.
Yeah. I will say this about the 2004 one. It's a low bar, but it probably has more... No, not probably. Sorry. It has more character development than the other two.
Yeah, for sure.
It feels like an actual movie. It's just not an actual good movie, so... Warzone stars the late Ray Stevenson. Rest in peace. And he's in the Ahsoka series. I don't know if you knew that or not.
Yeah, he's the main sort of dark Jedi in that show.
I haven't watched it yet, but that was like hearing
he's definitely the best part of Ahsoka so far.
And he's probably the best part of Warzone too.
Yeah, that's fair.
But like I remember hearing like Ahsoka was one of his last shows.
Yeah.
One of his last projects before he died, but anyway.
Real quick,
we're dedicating this episode to Ray Stevenson.
Yes. Real quick, can we actually wind back to the 2004 film? There's something that we kind of forgot with that one.
Uh-oh.
With the cast and the characters.
Did I miss something? I don't remember.
Those weird 3 characters living in the abandoned apartment building that the Punisher is also in.
That's right, yeah.
Because they're pretty important characters.
I didn't write much down about them because they didn't leave much of an impression on me, I guess. So.
Yeah, but they were just like these weird characters. One of them's got piercings all over the place.
One of them's playing video games all the time.
They're like weird comic relief characters, and one of them gets like tortured. Eventually, they're strange additions.
Yeah, I might talk about that a little bit more when I have a line from one of them later on when we get to the dialogue. But yeah, they just were sort of there for me. I didn't think they were very good comic relief. I think was part of it. Like,
yeah.
Warzone, Ray Stevenson is in the cast. Dominic West, which we have had him on the podcast before.
We have.
He was in another Star Wars thing. He was a palace guard in The Phantom Menace.
Oh, really?
He has also played Ernest Hemingway in a movie called Genius. And he was the main villain in Johnny English Reborn. And he's the main villain in Warzone, but we'll get to that. Wayne Knight is in this, which most people would know him as Dennis Nedry from Jurassic Park, or Newman from Seinfeld.
Yeah. No, I didn't read who the cast was before watching this, and so Wayne Knight showed up and I was really confused.
I know, it's so weird. He's another character that you're just like, why does this dude hang out with the Punisher? Because he's sort of the Lucius Fox of the movie. He like brings him his weapons and stuff.
Yeah.
Colin Salmon, which he was in 2 of the Resident Evil movies.
Oh, was he in the first one?
He's in the first one and Retribution.
Okay. Interesting. He's got a thing for bad movies, doesn't he?
Oh, man.
He was in Die Another Day, apparently.
Oh, yeah, he does have a thing for bad movies if he's also in that. Retribution's one of the best Resident Evil movies. What are you talking about?
He's in a couple Bond movies.
Oh, what other ones is he in?
He's in Tomorrow Never Dies and The World Is Not Enough.
So he's in like 3 of the Pierce Brosnan ones.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
He's a returning cast member. He was in Alien vs. Predator.
I sort of recognize. Yeah, that's right. Okay. Because I was like watching the movie and I was going, I feel like I recognized that guy, but I couldn't remember what it was. It might have been AVP, might have been one of those things. Okay. We also got Doug Hutchinson, and he was Percy in The Green Mile.
Oh, really?
Yep. And Toombs in The X-Files.
Oh.
I was wondering if you would recognize him since you like the X-Files.
Oh, it's that guy.
He's like a really bad dude in that show, isn't he?
Yeah, he's the guy that can like stretch through like windows and grates and
That's
like murders
right.
women.
Oh my god, I remember that episode. I actually remember that episode now.
Because he was actually in 2 episodes, because he gets arrested in his first one and then he breaks out and tries to kill Scully in his second episode.
I think I only saw the first episode he was in, but yeah, I remember that. Another returning cast member, Julie Benz. She was one of the missionaries in the 4th Rambo movie.
Oh!
Which came out the same year this movie did, by the way.
We've got all sorts of returning cast members in
and
this one.
Another returning actor.
Okay.
TJ Storm, who had an uncredited role in the 1995 Mortal Kombat movie.
Oh, he's just a guest fighter, apparently.
I guess. Okay, so with Warzone, before I'd seen the movie, I'd actually heard really good things about Ray Stevenson as the Punisher. Like, I basically heard that the movie was really bad, but he was the best part of it, and I thought he was pretty good in this.
Yeah.
As the Punisher. Like, the movie's just filled with terrible acting, but he's one of the few that actually does a good job.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, I think if you took Ray Stevenson and put him in the 2004 one, that would probably be the best Punisher movie, because honestly, Ray Stevenson going after the villains in that movie.
Yeah, no, that would have been pretty good.
That would have been so satisfying, yeah. Because he's like really intimidating, but he does have some like. He's also pretty quiet and solemn. He felt sort of like Batman.
Yeah, a little bit more so than the other two.
Because he wears black, he has like a hidden lair, and a guy that brings him weapons and stuff.
Who just so happens to be Wayne Knight.
Yeah, Wayne Knight. And he's sad because his family's dead. And also, like Batman, he's like super dark and brooding, and the villains are really flamboyant and silly. Really, all that Ray Stevenson is missing, he just needs an Alfred or a Punisher mobile. I mean...
Punisher mobile. It's just a giant skull on wheels.
You add those in, it's basically an R-rated Batman movie. I mean...
Yeah, where Batman brutally murders people.
I'm still waiting for them to do an R-rated Batman movie. I mean, I was hoping the Batman would be, but...
I thought the Batman was R-rated.
PG-13. Nope.
Really?
You thought that was R-rated. It's not even close.
Well, the extended edition of Batman v Superman is R-rated.
We're not counting that. That's not Batman. But what I liked about Ray Stevenson is he's like super brutal to the criminals, but you can tell he has like some humanity left, because he's usually pretty nice to people that aren't evil
that aren't criminals.
That aren't evil scum of the earth criminals. So under all that gloominess, you can still tell that he cares. And there was like one subplot of it I thought was kind of interesting. I wish there was a bit more of it. He's like hanging out with the family of this guy that he killed who was innocent.
Yeah.
And this is honestly, of the 3 movies, I felt the most bad for Ray Stevenson in this, which I didn't get quite as much of that from the other 2 movies.
No, especially not Dolph.
Yeah, Dolph, he's just...
he's just... I think that comment you made is accurate. He's just the Terminator.
Which Dolph Lundgren even sounds a little bit like Arnold in that movie, too. But the other characters, the villains are absurd.
I especially it's hard to describe because you have the one guy named Jigsaw who's just kind of insane and disfigured, and then you got Looney Bin Jit,
I love the names.
a psychopath who has too much adrenaline and testosterone, so he kills people.
What I wrote is at least towards the beginning, what they felt like was Statler and Waldorf doing phony Italian accents. They felt more like that than actual gangsters, and the acting, it was so over the top and goofy. Like, I couldn't take them seriously at all. I mentioned Batman earlier, and that really is what it's like, is, you know, Batman's super dark and serious, and, like, the villains are, like, super goofy. You might as well have, like, the Joker or, the Riddler in this or something. It's just so silly. Also, the cops are useless in this movie.
Completely useless.
Like, to a ridiculous extent in this whole thing. But basically, in comparing these, okay, with the characters, you basically have, they're either really goofy or, wait, they actually kind of tried? I think, okay, for cast, I think the 2004 one wins.
I think so, yeah.
I think characters, I think it might win that too, actually. Because it has more character development.
And then I feel like some of the performances are just a little bit more memorable in the 04 one, like Travolta especially.
Honestly, I felt like the villains in Warzone were more memorable, but
memorable, but not for the right reasons.
True, yeah. That was the thing I was wondering with the comics, is like, are the comics like super dark and serious, or are they actually
they're pretty dark and serious,
or are they actually this ridiculous? Like, anyway. Okay, so the 2004 one, there's more character development. The villains are less silly. It also has more recognizable cast members. Like, people know who John Travolta is. And maybe Thomas Jane. Although I do think Warzone has the best depiction of the Punisher of the three movies.
Yeah.
Oh, some people root for Thomas Jane. Maybe a smaller number of people root for Dolph Lundgren because they grew up in the 80s, you know?
Yeah.
Dolph was fun, but this to me, I mean, come on. But yeah, so the 2004 one, I think, wins that category.
Yep.
Okay, this next one's gonna be interesting.
Oh boy, directing.
Okay, one thing I should mention before I get to these, the combined total movie directing credits for these three directors, 9 movies.
Oh no. That's not good.
If you add a few more, you could have one director's total filmography. 1989 one was directed by Mark Goldblatt.
Okay.
And most of his filmography was spent as an editor or assistant director, including movies we've done on the podcast.
Really?
And some of these might not be surprising. Rambo First Blood Part 2.
Okay.
RoboCop. Super Mario Brothers.
Oh, no.
Why do we keep making Mario connections? True Lies.
Okay.
And Armageddon.
Huh.
And he even got an Oscar nomination for editing Terminator 2, so he... As far as, like, editing and assistant director credits, he's got a lot of those. But the only other movie he directed, and this might not surprise you, it was an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie.
Really?
Red Heat. Arnold as a Russian cop, I think is what that one was.
Oh, that movie.
I don't remember much of it, honestly.
I just remember with the fake leg, and Arnold goes, cocaine them!
Yeah, and Jim Belushi's in it as well.
Oh, really?
Yep. I could see why this guy didn't direct much. Whenever this movie tried to be serious, the 1989 Punisher, whenever this movie tried to be serious, it was unintentionally hilarious.
Yeah.
Like, whenever Dolph Lundgren had flashbacks, I was laughing at just how melodramatic it was. Like, it's so poorly executed.
And it's so confusing. I know we briefly mentioned the Yakuza are in this movie, but when they show up, it is just the most confusing scene ever.
And there's also ninjas, too.
Yeah.
It feels like with this movie, they were either trying too hard or not enough.
Yeah.
It's so poorly executed. Like, none of his choices really make this movie stand out, at least not in a good way.
No. The only thing really unique that I can think that it kind of does for itself is towards the end when they turn out all the lights and so you see everything in red for like 5 minutes.
Yeah, that was cool. But that's
about it, really.
It just felt very paint by numbers. There just wasn't any intensity or suspense to any of it.
Yeah.
It really just fails to stand out from like other canon movies. Like, it just, you watch it and it's just so obvious that this was made by an amateur director. Like, I mean,
yeah.
So the 2004 one was directed by Jonathan Hensley, and he was one of the writers on Armageddon.
Oh, so they both worked on the same movie?
I wonder what that conversation was like. I feel like,
wow.
You know what I think happened? I think the other guy was saying, "Oh, I just directed like a Punisher movie," and then the other guy's like, "Wait, maybe I should direct a Punisher movie sometime."
That's so weird.
He also helped write. Oh, there's some weird ones here. Die Hard with a Vengeance.
Okay.
Jumanji. Some episodes of Young Indiana Jones.
Huh.
Veggie Tales, the toy that saved Christmas.
What?
I hope he's the one that created Buzzsaw Louie. I just hope. The Saint with Val Kilmer.
Huh.
And Next, which that was the movie, I don't know if you ever saw it. Nicolas Cage, he can like see several minutes into the future.
Oh, I do not know about that one. Oh, here's something interesting.
Oh no.
He was also an executive producer for Con Air.
How many Nicolas Cage connections does this guy have? And Jerry Bruckheimer connections. Oh my god.
He also was uncredited writing for Gemini Man.
Oh man. You wanted to do a Will Smith movie. Is that what you want to do on the podcast?
Please no.
I'd be up to do I Am Legend, honestly.
Yeah.
I think that'd make a good podcast. Or, nah, not iRobot. Like, anyway. But yeah, so the 2004 Punisher, I think it's directed okay. Like,
yeah.
Again, it's nothing amazing. The staging of it is all right. It's blunt, but not too in your face. But at the same time, It didn't really feel very unique.
It felt pretty standard for the time, honestly.
And the movie, that's one of my problems with the 2004 one, is it just feels standard. It just feels like a generic revenge movie, but
yeah,
maybe I'll get to that later. But like, there's not really a lot of flash or style to it. This isn't exactly Sam Raimi or George Miller we're talking about here. So, but I think better than the 1989 one though. So there's that.
Yeah, it's competent overall. So,
Warzone was directed by Lexi Alexander.
Did Lexi also work on Armageddon by any chance?
I don't think so, no.
Darn.
She mostly directs TV shows,
Okay.
including episodes of How to Get Away with Murder, Supergirl,
Oh,
Arrow,
interesting.
and a Taken TV show that I didn't even know existed.
I didn't know there was a... Yeah. Huh.
Yeah. And her only other feature film credits are two movies I've never heard of. One of them is called Green Street Hooligans, which is about football hooligans.
Okay.
And it stars Elijah Wood. Couldn't get the Armageddon connection, but there is an indirect...
a Deep Impact connection.
And a movie called Lifted. There's just like this drama about a singing competition in Afghanistan war, whatever. And apparently she also did martial arts and even met Chuck Norris.
Oh.
Who encouraged her to go into the film industry. So thanks, Chuck Norris. You indirectly made Punisher Warzone. Okay, so Warzone, it has style and flair to it.
It definitely has style.
It feels like a movie.
Yeah, I don't know if this
it feels
is getting a bit...
For me, of the three, I think it also feels the most like a comic book movie.
Yeah. And it's definitely like, this is kind of getting into visual effects almost, but it's definitely like the bloodiest of them all.
That's also getting into the punishments as well.
Yeah, but I feel like it does sort of play into directing a little bit. It's sort of filmed to show off all of these dudes dying in these
the
various
action
ways.
Is definitely shot the best of the three movies.
Yeah.
And I think it has the most energy of the three movies, so...
Yeah.
My pick for this one's actually Warzone, believe it or not. I don't know if that surprises you or not.
I think I'm going to agree with that. I didn't really know what my pick was going to be going into this, but I think you're right. The 04 and the 89 ones are just a bit too bland. They don't really...
Warzone feels the most unique of the three, so...
Yeah.
Yeah. Finally, Warzone gets a point.
I know.
It'll be getting more later, too. Critical reception. Now, this one's...
Oh boy.
One we have no hand in. The 1989 one has a 25% critic score on Rotten Tomatoes.
Oof.
The audience gave it 33%.
Okay.
On IMDb, it has a 5.6 out of 10.
Okay.
And on Letterboxd, it has a 2.7 out of 5. So, like, basically the 1989 Punisher just never had a chance during this competition, is what I'm saying. And I couldn't find Roger Ebert's review of the 89 one, but from the way he ends his Warzone review, it sounds like he saw it and didn't like it, so... Leonard Maltin reviewed it, though.
I'm gonna guess he gave it a bomb.
No, actually.
Oh, is it a 1.5?
No, 2 out of 4.
Wow, that's high.
Yeah. He said, Cop, Lou Gossett, and especially gangster Yaron Krabbe come close to rising above silly script. I take it he's not a Dolph Lundgren fan, then, in that case. Okay, the 2004 one has a 29% critic score on Rotten Tomatoes.
Just barely higher.
Then the audience gave it 63%.
Oh, wow.
So, it's winning the Rotten Tomatoes game so far. On IMDb, it has a 6.4 out of 10.
Okay.
And on Letterboxd, it has a 2.9 out of 5.
So, higher overall than 89.
Yeah, and Roger Ebert reviewed this one. He gave it 2 out of 4 stars.
Okay.
And said, the Punisher is so grim and cheerless, you wonder if even its hero gets any satisfaction from his accomplishments. Insert Rolling Stones, I can't get no satisfaction reference here. So yeah, he wasn't a fan. Richard Roper, on the other hand, he was his co-host at the movies. disagreed, calling it a lot of fun.
Really?
That is... okay. That's an interesting way to describe Thomas Jane and the Punisher. I mean, it has fun moments.
Yeah.
We'll get to that later. Rex Reed. That insane dude. He said, "There isn't a moment in The Punisher that isn't borrowed or stolen from another movie." I actually kind of agree with him. Wow.
Yeah.
And I hate Rex Reed. Leonard Maltin, he did review this one. He didn't review Warzone, though.
Okay.
But you want to guess what his review of the 2004 Punisher was?
I'll say 2.5.
Wrong. He gave it a bomb.
Of course. I should have known.
I would think it'd be the other way around. You give a bomb to the 89 one and then 2 out of 4 to this one, but
maybe he was just confused.
Maybe. He called it an excruciating adaptation of the Marvel comic book. Formulaic idea is powered by repeated scenes of sadism and torture, with ham-handed performances as icing on the cake. Unbelievable in every sense of the word. Oh, wait a minute. I think that is his review of Warzone. Let me check. Yeah, I'd imagine if he saw Warzone, he would have hated it even more than in that case.
Yeah.
Okay, speaking of Warzone, it has a 29% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Ooh, okay.
From the critics. 42% audience score.
Okay.
It has a 5.9 out of 10 on IMDb. I did also find Roger Ebert's review for this one, so... he gave it 2 out of 4 stars and said, "You used to be able to depend on a terrible film being poorly made. No longer. The Punisher Warzone is one of the best made bad movies I've seen."
That's fairly accurate, I'd say.
He added that the film's only flaw is that it's disgusting. And on Letterboxd is a 2.7 out of 5. So the 2004 one won, obviously.
Yeah.
It basically annihilated this category. Like, every review place I could find said, unless, I don't know if Roger Ebert liked the 2004 one more or Warzone more, but who knows. But I think, that one was a wash.
Yeah.
Music.
Okay, the music.
The 1989 one had a score by Dennis Dreif, and he also composed the music for The Purple People Eater. But not the song The Purple People Eater, so who cares? And I think some of the music in the 89 one might have been reused from other canon movies.
That doesn't really surprise me.
There were a few cues that sounded familiar, but I couldn't quite place it. There might have been some Death Wish music in there. Death Wish 3 or 4 or something. It's a serviceable score. It doesn't really save the movie or anything, but it's not the worst. Although I guess isn't the worst thing a movie score can be is forgettable.
I think there was only one part that I wrote anything down about the music in this one, and it was during sort of the torture scene when they're on the stretcher. There was a song that started playing. I apparently liked it because I wrote down I liked the music during the torture scene in my notes.
Okay.
But
I guess annoying is worse than forgettable, but... The 2004 one had a music score by Carlos Ciliotto. I don't know how to pronounce that.
Ciliotto.
He did the music for a bunch of stuff I've never heard of, and the only thing of his I've seen, okay, I knew this was going to come back at some point, was that Julius Caesar miniseries I mentioned earlier.
That's pretty good.
That co-starred Richard Harris and Christopher Walken. And apparently had the incredibly white Jesus Jeremy Sisto in it as Julius Caesar. and Fluke, which featured Samuel L. Jackson as a talking dog.
Oh.
I'm just waiting for somebody to do an edit of that movie where they include him saying motherfucker a bunch. Because it's like a kid's movie, but imagine. Yeah, the music score with the 2004 one, it was okay.
I really don't remember anything from it.
Like, it did its job, but it wasn't amazing or
Hmm.
honestly even memorable. Warzone, now this one's interesting, because it actually had a pretty successful soundtrack album.
Huh.
It was a lot more successful than the movie. And if you like metal or punk, I mean,
Yeah.
there's an album for you, because you got Rob Zombie, Slipknot, Rise
Slayer.
Against, Seether, yeah, Slayer as well, like you mentioned. So, and
I will say,
there was like one part I heard a song in there, and I was like, wait a minute, I think I've heard that before. I was like, just thinking, wow, I haven't heard that song in a long time.
I will say this soundtrack probably fits the best with the Punisher as just a concept.
Yeah.
Because, you know, it's a guy going around murdering a bunch of dudes. You would expect something like metal and not whatever we got in the 1989 movie.
Yeah, you would expect Slayer to be playing.
Exactly.
The composer was Michael Windmacher, and he did music for some Jackie Chan movies.
Huh.
Including Armor of God, and one of my favorite Jackie Chan movies, Twin Dragons.
Huh.
Which is where he has like a twin brother, and they're both like fighting at the same time. It's insane. That movie's insane. Piranha 3D.
My favorite Piranha movie.
You haven't seen any of them, have you?
No.
They're all terrible, basically. Although the Joe Dante one's alright. Voice from the Stone with Amelia Clarke.
Huh.
That's the only reason I watched it, is because Amelia Clarke's in it. And Drive Angry, which, if you want to see a Nicolas Cage movie with some hilarious 3D effects, there's the movie for you.
Yeah.
And Amber Heard's in it as well, apparently.
Oh.
Yeah, that movie would actually make a great podcast. It's ridiculous.
I just opened up the Wikipedia page and I just see Nicolas Cage's John Milton. He returns from hell after 10 years.
It is ridiculous, yeah. So, I think this one has to go to Warzone, I mean, because...
Yeah, I agree.
It had a pretty successful soundtrack, so...
And it fit the movie better than the other two.
Yeah. Visual effects. Now,
there's a lot of explosions in these movies.
Yeah, there is that. The 1989 one, I didn't really notice too many special effects.
Not really.
It was mostly stunt work and blood squibs, I guess. So, I mean...
Yeah.
For a canon movie, it looks okay, so... They obviously were a little more aware of the money they had on this movie than Superman 4, so I don't really remember anything as far as the makeup goes, but whatever. The 2004 one, that one didn't seem to have many special effects in it either, aside from
it had one big one at the very end.
Yeah, with like fire and stuff, yeah.
Yeah, he basically blows up an entire parking lot into the shape of the Punisher's skull.
We'll talk about that a little more later on punishments.
Yeah.
It looks like they did most of it with practical effects. I'll give them that. So the stunts and explosions, they looked real, and they used blood squibs. You know, I guess these aren't really the types of movies that require lots of special effects, to be fair, but...
Yeah.
The one that did utilize the most effects was Warzone, and there was some pretty good gore in that one, I thought.
Yeah, because, you know, the Punisher's introduction in that one is decapitating a guy, so...
Yeah, he punches it. Again, we'll talk about that more under punishments, but... And the makeup on Jigsaw, I thought, wasn't bad, although he did look kind of like Frankenstein's monster.
He did.
I gotta say, this is a much better Frankenstein movie than Army of Frankensteins.
Doesn't take much.
And there's explosions as well. I think Warzone wins this one.
Yeah, without a doubt, it's a war zone.
Okay, story. Here we go. Here's a category.
Oh boy. Oh boy, the story of these movies.
When I was writing some of this, I almost confused Frank Castle with Nick Castle. The 1989 one, we sort of see flashbacks of Frank Castle's family getting killed.
Yeah.
And Dolph Lundgren yelling really over dramatically while the camera's zooming in.
And the basic driving premise behind the story is so stupid and funny, in my opinion. Because so he's been the Punisher for 5 years. He's killed 125 different mobsters. And it's weakened all these different crime families so much that the Yakuza decide to show up and take over New York instead. And then the Yakuza go and kill the mobs. No, they kidnap the mobs' families to sell their children into slavery.
Yeah, it's
and so the Punisher has to work with the mobsters to save their children from the Yakuza.
It's the stupidest premise. Like, it's basically like I mean, this is what Canon did though, is they would like make things just super over the top and just cartoonish. Like you look at like Invasion USA. The plot of that movie is basically every terrorist from around the world invades the United States, and they're stopped by Chuck Norris. So, or was this a documentary? Wait a minute. But yeah, so there were so many funny and weird details about this one. One thing I found interesting though, in this one, because in the other two he's a former FBI agent, but in this one he's a former cop.
Yeah. And they briefly mentioned that he's an ex-Marine as well.
Yeah, Vietnam veteran, which I haven't seen that before. And he lives in the sewer and then occasionally kills people.
Well, not occasionally. He's killed 125 mobsters over 5 years.
I'd like to point out that 125 number, that's more than the number of people he kills in the actual movie. Kill count increases to like 170 something in the movie. Yeah, it's but really when you look at the story, it's just your typical vigilante justice type movie.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have to change much, and this could just be Death Wish 5.
I wonder if it started as Death Wish 5.
They might have tried to get Charles Bronson to be in it for all I know. Also, there is no character development in this movie.
None.
That's
from
something
nobody.
Canon would do, is they would like just cut out like quote unquote filler just to get to the action scenes. So
here's the funniest case of that, in my opinion, in this movie. So sort of the main mobster, he has to go ask the Punisher to go save his kid. And these are two people who hate each other.
Mm-hmm.
And so they go through this journey together through this building, killing off the Yakuza in New York. And then right at the very end, they save the mobster's kid, and the mobster's like, well, it's time for me to kill the Punisher. Like, he's not developed any sort of humanity or sorrow for the Punisher.
The way I interpreted it was he was using it, he was tricking him to get him to take out the Yakuza. So that then he could, so then he could be in charge. But maybe that's too complicated for Canon to come up with. I don't know.
And I just want to talk about the rest of this final scene because it is
it's absurd. Yeah,
it's so funny and it shouldn't be. So the mob boss and the Punisher have this fight that ends with the Punisher shooting him in the chest right in front of the mobster's kid. And so the mobster's kid picks up the gun and he's like, I'm gonna shoot you! I'm gonna grow up and be like my daddy and I'm gonna shoot you! And the Punisher pulls the gun to his forehead and starts yelling, do it, blow my head off. And then before leaving, he goes, "You're a good boy. Grow up to become a good man. Because if not, I'll be waiting."
That scene was honestly, like, it made me think of that scene in Rambo First Blood Part 2 where Rambo like threatens Murdoch at the end and he says like, "Find him or I'll find you." It reminded me of that.
Because I don't think they meant for that scene to be funny, but it was so over the top and so stupid.
It was supposed to be this like super dramatic scene and it's like it's so stupid. Yeah, it's so poorly acted and directed that it just comes across like laughable. And when you look at the movie, the characters, they're about as thin as you can get. Like, which they might as well just be like cardboard stand-ups for Dolph Lundgren to just knock down, And again, that's kind of just what what their action movies are like,
Yeah.
And I do like a lot of canon movies, so that did make this movie very enjoyable, but for the wrong reasons. When I was watching this movie, honestly, at some point, I just thought, this feels like that fake Simpsons movie, McBain, if it was a real film.
That's pretty accurate.
It's that stupid and cliched. Like, it's...
Ugh.
Because it's all just like these villains just sitting around in board meetings, and then occasionally Dolph Lundgren shows up and shoots people. Like it's
there's I don't know. I don't think this fits in anywhere else, so I'm just gonna bring it up now. There's also this character that works for the Yakuza. I think she's the main villain's adopted daughter. That takes out her earrings at one point and throws them at a dude, and it pins his hands to the wall. Somehow.
That was strange. I'm surprised that's not in, like, Kill Bill or something.
Yeah, no. There were parts of this, like, when all the Yakuza were
Her
training.
character felt like, what's-her-name from Kill Bill.
Mm.
The Lady Snowblood-inspired character. I don't know what her name was. Lucy Liu's character.
Oh, yeah, her. Oren Ishii.
Yeah, she basically felt like that character.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just so, like... I'll get into this a little more later, but I had a lot of fun watching the 89 one, but not for... I don't
Not
think
for the
it was
right
for
reasons.
the reasons they intended. Okay, the 2004 one, the plot involves Frank Castle as an FBI agent whose wife and children are killed by the mob. That sounds familiar. Moving on.
Well, I would like to mention something. It wasn't just his wife and children, it was also his entire extended family, because they were at a family reunion at the time.
Oh my god, yeah, that's ridiculous. That was another thing about the 2004 one. It was trying to be, like, really serious, but there were occasionally moments in it that I was like, okay, that's a little silly. Not enough to make it hilariously bad, though. But anyway, but yeah, so his whole family gets wiped out by the mob, and then he just goes vigilante. So again, Death Wish. It's sort of like Death Wish, one of those types of movies. But the beginning of the movie was weird, because it seemed to be focusing mainly on the mobsters.
Yeah.
And it was taking a while for Frank Castle to show up. It was kind of reminding me of Darkman a bit.
A little.
A little bit, that's what the 2004 Punisher was missing. It needed, like, a Durant-like character to liven it up a bit. But as far as the plot goes, I mean, the 2004 one, it's blunt, it gets the job done, but it's just the most bare bones you can get with the vigilante movie. I mean, there is character development, but not much.
Yeah.
Just more so than the other two.
There's also that one part where it gets weirdly convoluted, because, the Punisher basically stalks the mobster's family. He finds out that the one guy is gay, and then he finds out Travolta's wife's schedule, and so he tries to frame things like the wife and like,
He's having
you
an
know,
affair. Yeah.
yeah, just so that it would get Travolta to murder both of them.
Is that what the Punisher does? He just like plans like these elaborate like double cross things? Because that
From what I've seen, no, he just goes in and kills everybody.
That's what. Yeah, that was weird. And speaking of the villains, they're like just so black and white. They're basically just evil for the sake of being evil. Like,
especially Travolta.
they kill this dude's entire family without any kind of remorse or reason. Like, there's literally no reason for them to kill all of them. Like, it's basically just like, we need villains in our movie, and they need to do villain stuff.
Because the whole thing was like, oh, he stopped our drug sale. Oh no, we gotta kill his entire extended family. We're going the Stalin route.
Wouldn't it make sense to just kill him? It doesn't make any sense. Do they not want to raise suspicion or something? But I don't know. Wiping out a person's entire family is pretty suspicious.
Yeah, no, that would end up in the news for sure.
It does, because they mentioned that it was on TV at one point.
Yeah.
But I mean, hey, at least they didn't kill his dog, like in John Wick. So there's that. Wait. So that means... Oh my god, this is like 2 podcasts in a row where kids die.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh man, I love it. The one we did before this was a Disney movie.
Yeah.
Really, the only character development you get, I guess, is for Frank, but that's about it. I mean, and
yeah, and it's kind of reverse character development. He starts off as just an FBI agent and becomes a homicidal maniac.
There were just a lot of scenes of just the villains just villaining around, and there was like no reason for it to be there.
Yeah.
They're like at parties and stuff, and I'm just like, okay, what does this have to do with the plot? And anyway, like the most character development you get for the villains is, oh, Will Patton is gay, apparently. Okay, so Warzone barely has a plot.
Basically, the Punisher, you know, his family's dead. We've established that already.
They do it kind of similar to how the 1989 one, where it's like through flashbacks, but at least in this one, the flashbacks aren't unintentionally hilarious.
Yeah.
But the movie is almost all action and gratuitous violence.
So the basic plot is the Punisher ends up mangling this dude's face. Named the character's name is Jigsaw, by the way. He sadly doesn't hook up weird torture devices to various people throughout the movie.
Yeah, I had a feeling we were gonna mention that. Yeah, I loved Mr. Puzzles Wants You to Be Less Alive. That was a great movie. I know what you're referencing. So, and the other plot point is that, and this I thought was actually interesting. Frank killed an innocent man.
Yep.
And he feels really guilty about it, so he's like trying to atone by spending time with that man's family. I was like, okay.
Like, that was actually a pretty interesting piece of humanization and character development for him.
Unfortunately, they don't do that much with it, but that alone makes it a little bit more interesting than the 2004 one, and definitely the 1989 one.
But yeah, no, the main plot is ridiculous because this guy Jigsaw, whose face is mangled, breaks his psychotic brother, known as Looney Bin Jim.
What even were the main villains planning in that movie anyway?
They just wanted to kill the Punisher. That was their whole goal, was to kill the Punisher.
Fair enough, but I thought they had like some big scheme going on. Okay, so it's just revenge. Like the whole thing's about revenge. Okay.
Yeah.
And also the Warzone flowed more like a movie than the other ones did.
Yeah.
It almost felt too short though. It felt like there was a scene or two missing.
Especially with like that secondary plot. I feel like having 1 or 2 more interactions between Frank and the family would have helped.
And I was also confused whether it was a remake or a sequel to the 2004 one. Apparently it's a reboot.
I think it's a reboot. It's just not related.
But it's strange that it came out so soon after that one did that you would think it was a sequel. And it feels more like a superhero movie than the 2004 one did, so there's that.
Yeah.
And definitely more than the 1989 one did. Because you got the hero with the tragic past, the villain gets his face all fucked up. I mean, that's more what I'm used to in a type of... Okay, so... what are we gonna go with here? Do you want to
probably Warzone for at least trying to have an interesting subplot to it and some character development?
I feel like the 2004 one tried a little more with character development. It just didn't work.
Yeah.
And because it was a longer movie, they were able to fit in a little bit more. I do know what lost this category, though. It's the 1989 one, which has, like, zero plot.
And what little plot there is absolutely nonsensical.
It whipped by fast, though, at least, so there's that. But, I think Warzone, I'm gonna give it to Warzone just...
Yeah.
Slightly just because of that subplot that we mentioned with, like, he's trying to, with the family and stuff. So yeah, let's give it to Warzone. I was a little undecided on that one at first, but yeah. So what are we at? 4 points for Warzone?
Yep, 4 for Warzone, 3 for the 2004, and 1 for the 1989.
Good night, you stupid idiot. Good night, you miserable slob.